Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Barry, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things were done in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, I'm going into the show having a good idea of what Barry was about. This is my first time watching it, so I'm watching everything like for the first time, one episode at a time. But I thought this was kind of a nice start. It is interesting that the show does start. I don't know, I guess there would have been build up to what he does. It's just kind of like, nope, you're just immediately there. It's like, yep, this is the guy I just killed and I'm just leaving and kind of getting the ins and outs of. It's so interesting because I guess in my head I would assume because of, you think, because he's a hitman, you think he'd live a little bit more of a glamorous life. But then when you look at everything with Fuchs, like how everything is like super cheap, that it's like, and in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, does Barry get screwed over? Is he not making as much money? Like, the fact is they cheap out on, like, even, like, his next target being, like, going to LA and stuff. They cheap out on, like, oh, yeah, you gotta drive, well, you have to, what was it, like, he's gonna have to take, like, a cheaper flight. It's like, oh, he's gonna be leaving, like, 4 hours, plus you're gonna have to do, like, a 2-hour drive or something like that, too, so cheap out. He's like, yeah, how much cheaper was it? Fuchs doesn't bother answering, so you're like, okay. So, because you look at his place too, you just assume because he's an assassin and a hired hitman that he'd be living it up, enjoying the good life. It's like, nope. And so he's out here killing a guy because this guy, what is he? I think it's your stereotypical, like, I forgot what he was. He was like a coach or something, like a workout coach or something like that, and ended up sleeping with the wrong guy's wife and ended up getting caught. And I love that dude. What's his name? Hank, who's played by Anthony Carrigan, which I know as my first introduction to him was as Victor Zsasz in Gotham. But I believe that's his character's name, Hank. And I love that he showed the footage, and the guy Gordon was like, why are you showing him that? He's like, no, I wanted him to see the... No, he already understood. You didn't have to show him. You just showed him because you want to show, oh my God, how cool it is that you caught it. He's like, get rid of it. He's like, okay. And I love that Fuchs had told Barry to make a good impression on him. So it's like, right, that one guy, you stabbed him in the nuts. Like, lead with that, And he's like, right, I could kill the guy however you guys want. I could... It's this Ryan guy. I could stab him in the nuts. So like, why would you do that? He's like, no, I'm saying I did it once. You're like, no, can you just shoot him? Shooting is pretty painful. Have you ever been shot before? He's like, I've been shot before. It's pretty painful. He's like, no, I can shoot. And it's like, okay. And the guy was, I love him. It's like, this guy, he's going to shoot him. It's like, it's so weird. And obviously the circumstances, once again, went into this knowing the premise of Barry wanting to be an actor, but I didn't realize like the circumstances that were going to lead to it. The fact is he followed Ryan to a class that he's taking, and just the thing of like, wow, like having to kind of Barry's almost like, wait, what? Because Barry's a little weird and awkward, and actually was really, I think it's so interesting how the show, I would say it's a very dark comedy show, but I think there's going to be a lot of heart to it in a weird way. Not necessarily a weird way, but I think this is going to be one of those shows that balances that dark humor with kind of like some serious, like, heartfelt moments. Because we learned a lot about Barry later on. And the fact is, he was in the military. He was in Afghanistan. He came back home and didn't feel right. He was depressed, and Fuchs hooked him up with this job. For him, he found, like, Fuchs was like, oh no, this is your purpose, like, you're killing bad people, which is also like, is Ryan a bad person? Like, what did he do? He slept with a married woman. Does he deserve to die? Or it's like, he only deserves to die because he slept with the wrong person's significant other. So, but, because makes you wonder, like, what did the other people actually do that Barry ended up killing? I think he typically doesn't ask questions. Maybe he's like, right, this is what they did. Maybe he gets some insight. So I wonder if that's something Barry's going to have to deal with, like, later on, finding out, like, oh, maybe there was more to his targets than I don't know. But I thought that was interesting, and he was like, for a while, it filled that void a little bit, but now it's gotten to the point, especially, and more recently, it's gotten to the point that that depressing feeling is coming back, and he wants something more, because he was even saying like, hey, maybe I should take a break, and folks was like, no, like, go out to LA, I'm sending you out there for a job, and that'll get you like refreshed and stuff. So Barry did some lines with Ryan during the whole thing. I was almost about to say like, Henry Winkler, which I already knew Henry Winkler was in this, but still, I think his character's name is Gene, right? He was like, what he put Sally through, I was like, at first I was like, man, you're an asshole, just putting that all out there in front of the entire class. But it was like, no, I was trying to get that raw emotion out of you. It was like, he's gonna be one of those guys. Like, I thought that's kind of neat. So he's not all bad. I think there's layers to that character. But Sally was able to give a good performance and stuff. I also love the whole residuals bar. I was like, I love the concept behind that. Like, I guess just everyone goes there just to, like, drink and have fun, but also it's like, yep, here's my residual check. You even see one of like, I got a residual check of 2 cents. And you're like, well, you actually hear about some of those residual deals and stuff like that from people like, people think I made a killing off that. I think if you right show, right circumstances, you can, but a lot of times it's like, no, it's like next to nothing. Like, you get, it's like, oh, cool. You wrote a check from me for 10 whole cents. Yay. Like, it's just interesting when you hear about stuff like that. I'm not well versed in like residual deals and like how that works, especially when you add in syndication and stuff like that. I don't know like the whole dealings of that, but you just hear people talk about it from time to time, whether it's like actors or, I mean, obviously the same equivalency in the music business with like royalties and stuff. Like, I mean, residuals and royalties kind of borderline the same thing. I wonder, do those work differently from music to? I'm sure they're different from like the music and TV shows. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, but also some other familiar faces: Darcy Carbon and Kirby Howell Batiste. I was like, hey. Both I best knew from The Good Place. Kirby, I also know her from Killing Eve as well. So there's so I was like, that's cool. This also episode, like, we got a small introduction to her, but I'm also like, is Sally a good person from the very beginning? Is because it seems like she, like, the fact that she's like, so and so is from from Puerto Rico, just booked CSI, and she's like, no one's actually from LA, but like Darcy's character is actually from LA, but it's kind of like she completely gets ignored. She just seems like kind of like the yes friend. It's like, it seems like Sally's like the leader of the pack to a certain extent. No, I'm making shallow judgments. Just got introduced to the character. I've only seen this one episode so far, but I was wondering if we're going to see more of that, where she just kind of might be a little mean girlish. I don't know if that's where the direction of that character. I could be completely wrong a couple episodes. Like, even the next episode, like, you completely had Sally twisted, so. But I do love that Ryan's like, nah, you need to change your name to Barry Block. And he's like, why would I do that? It's like, it needs to be something. It needs to stand out, and they all think that he can do it because, like, he kind of got roped into all of this, and it's like, I didn't know you were an actor. He's like, I'm not an actor. It's like, we can do it for a monologue. I'm not going to do a monologue. But Ryan was like, yo, you got to read this book by Gene, and you also got to, you got this, buddy, like, you're my scene partner. He's like, why are you so, like, because I think Barry hasn't had someone on his side for a while, like, because Fuchs is only on his side just because it's like, right, I benefit from you. You're kind of my go-to hitman guy. I wonder if Barry the only person he has. Like, it's not like he has a roster of hit people. It's probably only Barry, so it's kind of like, my go-to guy, my only guy kind of backs out. It kind of leaves me high and dry. We'll see. But regardless of all of that, I think it's fascinating that, it's like Hank and them it's like, oh my God, Barry hugging Ryan. It's like, no, you're supposed to be killing a guy, and you're hugging him. He did say it's going to take a couple of days, but I guess they wanted to check on progress, and it's like keeping an eye on him. They probably wanted to, Hank probably being who he is, either for his boss or just for his own sake, being like, I want to catch it when Barry ends up killing him or something. I don't know. But it's like, that got back to Fuchs. I don't know, I kept butchering that. Because I guess for whatever reason, because I keep looking at his name in the episode, and I think I want to just say Funches, like Ron Funches. I think that's what's kind of throwing me. But I think because Barry just calls him Fuchs. So I think in my head I'm just auto-completing it as Funches, like I said, regardless. But it's kind of like, oh yeah, you want to have a hobby and stuff like that, that's fine, but you can't be an actor. Like working, like, oh, that's the guy from that chicken commercial. It's like, I wouldn't do commercials. But it makes sense. It's like, right, the whole point of a hitman situation is to be having anonymity, and you being an actor is like the worst possible thing. So yeah, you gave up any form of a normal life the moment you decided to kill people. But that's also because like Barry felt like he had no other choices, like especially the probably dark hole he was in at the time, and then Fuchs ended up pulling him out of that. But it's like, yeah, it's just not fulfilling anymore. It's just like I think all that death and killing is just finally taking its toll on him. So he wants to do the acting thing, but it's like, no, you need to kill this Ryan guy and put an end to this. So he was. And he ended up missing the class, and I like, once again, he had that very heart-to-heart with Gene, and Gene was like, oh, what was that scene from? Oh, did you improvise that? He's like, I mean, the story was nonsense, which is also a little funny to be like, oh, like, yes, this is your true backstory. He gave you truth like you wanted, and you didn't believe him because you thought it was just, so... But it's like, right, you're going to have to pay your classes and stuff. Like, he's like, yeah, I got this. And then he has to, like, he's reading the book, and it's like, oh, Ryan's there. And you're like, oh, poor guy. He's like, oh, I'm going to have to kill Ryan. I think it's good he didn't have to do it, but it sucks. And they're just like, oh, man. It's like, you kind of feel bad because, like, yeah, because Ryan, the last interaction is Ryan dying, being like, oh, my scene partner, he left me high and dry. And, I mean, to be fair, Barry was going to kill him anyway. I think, he was ready for it. I wonder, will he have bailed at the last second? We'll never know how that would have fully played out, but at the very least, he probably would have killed Ryan and then probably would have gone to work the next day. But it's like, now he kind of doesn't have to feel as guilty because, like, right, I didn't kill my scene partner. And I love that the guy's like, the gun got either jammed or he was having trouble reloading, and Barry's like, don't point the gun at me. Do not pull out the gun at me. Bam, 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 bam. Spoilers, I already know Hank isn't dead because he's a recurring character in this. So how that's going to transpire and what the fallout of that's going to be for Barry, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But just casually strolls away, goes to like a nearby place, sits down. I love that the waitress who's serving him, she's like, oh, I'm also an actress. I'm like, yeah. Because Barry's whole plan was like, right, I want to be, only like 1% of actors can act full time and make a living off of that. Other people, it's like do other things at the same time, especially when you're getting like smaller bits and stuff like that. I mean, I think that kind of applies in a lot of areas when it comes to the entertainment industry. But I love that the waitress, if I'm not mistaken, that's Melissa, and I'm going to butcher her. Because in time I see her last time, I always want to say, like, Villaseñor, but it's like, it's not that. It's a very specific pronunciation, and I'm not going to attempt it like I did just then, because I'm going to butcher it. But I was like, hey, that's pretty dope. Because she's an SNL alum, like, she's still on SNL, right? I think she is. I know Bill Hader's connection to SNL and stuff, so I was like, oh, that's very befitting. But it's like, yeah, she's like, I'm an actor. And he's like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, hey. So kind of a really nice start to the show. Like I said, I went into this knowing kind of the premise behind it, but I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get there. So really nice start. I'm really excited to continue watching the show and just see where Barry's journey ends up taking him next, where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But I don't know how many episodes I'm going to be putting these up. I'm thinking maybe 4 at a time until I'm caught up. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe I'll only do it. Doesn't matter. I'll put up whatever I get done, I guess. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good